Hello, my name is Ellie Sutton.
And I'm Lillian Clark. We're going to talk today about learning about the stories of children with refugee backgrounds through the lens of positioning theory by Aizwen Shun.
And today we're going to start off with the summary portion. This study covers and talks a lot about students and their self-perceptions, so how they see themselves. And mainly this article talked about the three different areas, so the difficulties that they faced in America, their sense of self and how it got easier, and how they saw themselves in the future. So kind of like a past, present, future. And one of the things that was really interesting from this article and that it focused a lot on was how the students who saw themselves as marginalized would oftentimes try to challenge those positions, and they would try to fight those stereotypes or those norms. And one of those examples of that is when there was a student who she was already speaking a different language, but she was also learning English because she was in America. And then there was another student who speaks Somali. And as a fellow peer and a fellow student, she wanted to be able to help her peer. And so she decided to learn how to speak Somali to help her. And that story really challenged that whole stereotype of refugees being weak or not working hard or things like that. And so that tends to challenge the fact that they are not just recipients, but they're contributors as well to their schools and communities.
Yeah, and many teachers don't really recognize the way that these refugees are viewing themselves and I guess their place in the community, and because of that, they can be a lot of the time really unprepared to teach their students who have refugee backgrounds. Yeah, and so kind of like what she was talking about, there's a lot of negative connotations that come with the word refugee. So in this article, they chose to use students with refugee backgrounds, but that's really sad because refugees actually can be really enriching and help increase the diversity and just they're really good for classrooms and also for our community. Yeah, but even though they are good for our community, they do face lots of barriers and challenges in our school system, especially with like standardized testing, because sometimes they don't speak English, or maybe they do speak English, but the academic language that's on the testing can be just really inaccessible for them. And then a lot of the times teachers also have low expectations for their students. They kind of make up excuses and they're like, oh, they have a hard life, or they're still learning English, so they don't have to work as hard, or they don't have to achieve as much as my other students, which isn't true, because usually they have really high expectations for themselves, and they have those high hopes and they want that. Yeah, and then they also just like view each other themselves differently than the teachers can view them, which kind of creates I guess conflict in the way that the teachers are helping them. And then kind of like what she was talking about with the past, present, and future, this article talked about the struggles that students had when they started school or on the first day of school. A lot of the time they felt that language barrier and it was just really stressful. They were also bullied in the classroom, which made it really difficult, but they consider themselves, like presently, after having been in the United States for a year or two, as strong learners, and they have experiences where they can help their other peers, and they have really high hopes and high expectations for their futures.
Okay, we will now be talking about the praxis portion. And as I kind of mentioned earlier, I really love the story of the student who was willing to learn Somali for her peer to be able to help her, even though she was already learning English. And I just was wanting to also have the same desire and put forth the same effort to learn words or phrases and cultures, aspects about my students' cultures, that so that they feel seen, heard, and loved as well. I know that this can be hard as the teacher's already juggling 1,000 things, trying to make sure everything goes well with testing and trying to make sure that each student feels loved individually, even just when they already do have the same culture as the teacher or speak the same language. There's already 1,000 other factors, social economical status, all those other things. But this is something that I know is really important to each of the students, and so I just want to be able to be that teacher that shows that love to them.
I think I really want to, I guess, help the students who are in that really new phase and struggling a lot, because it can be so hard. And I want to make sure that they recognize that their linguistic abilities in their other language is valued, that they can use that in the classroom, and yeah, that they do have just so many strengths that are really, really important in those first years, and also after, that they can continue to develop literacy, I guess, in both languages or however many languages they speak. And I also want to make sure that I'm aware of how other students are treating them. They also mentioned bullying in those first, on the first day or that first time frame, because they didn't speak the language or they struggled to communicate with their peers. So I want to make sure that, like, I as a teacher have zero tolerance of that, that I am showing that I value them and I see them as smart and awesome, so that the students can also see their peers and their classmates as smart and awesome, and yeah, so that they can all get along.
Okay, we will now be talking about the reflection portion. So I really liked this article, and I loved all the information and the data and the quotes from the younger students. I feel like with a lot of research and the different articles that we've read, a lot of the times the direct data and quotes are from the parents or the teachers or administrators. And so I thought it was really neat to be able to hear it from them and hear it from their own experiences, so that we really did have a gauge of how they felt, and even them saying it in their own cute little words and at the level that they understand and that they speak was really important for me too, not just paraphrasing what they thought or felt, but really hearing exactly how they were feeling.
Yeah, I also really liked that about this article. I loved that they were interviewing the students instead of, the adults, because they're so much closer to that experience because they're in it right now. And so everything that they feel is very real and very pertinent to right now in our classrooms. Yeah, and I also really liked how they were so focused on the future and they had such high hopes and they just have such high expectations for themselves and the careers and the futures that they want to have, and I think that we should help them to achieve that.